A week ago, it was confirmed by the creative director that the remake of Demon's Souls will keep the same system for both world tendency and character tendency, so everything that applied to the PS3 version will apply for the remake.
So with world tendency and character tendency remain virtually
Yep,
unchanged from the original game?
they remain unchanged, so
Every Souls game had a mechanic where if you died, you would lose your human form, and you had to use a certain item to go back to that form. Dark Souls 1 had humanity, Dark Souls 2 had the human effigy, and Dark Souls 3 had the embers. In almost every Souls game, these forms were usually tied to how much HP you had, your drop rate, or your accessibility to online gameplay, and some other things. And it didn't really matter how many times you died in the Dark Souls game while being in your human form or even the Ember form, or it also didn't matter how many NPCs you get to kill. The world never changed around you. So basically, like, you weren't locked out of certain areas because you killed so many NPCs, or you weren't able to access this place because you died a lot. Your actions only applied to you, and it never affected the world around you in terms of like creating new events or unlocking new areas. Before the Dark Souls trilogy games, there was Demon's Souls, which also had a similar yet bit more complicated system referred to as tendency. This tendency was divided into world tendency and character tendency. So why should we care about this? Having good knowledge of this system gave you access to new areas, new NPC quest lines, weapons, armor sets. It could even worsen or improve your drop rate, and even determine like how difficult the enemies are and how much damage you do. As soon as you start the tutorial, you'll be playing the game in human form, until you get cut down by the Vanguard boss or slapped by the Dragon God, which will cause you to die and then be trapped in the Nexus. Which then you will be in the Soul form, where you'll notice that your HP has been reduced to 50%, and you have this kind of blue aura or glow around you, which basically means that you're in Soul form. To fix that, you would either need to use the Stone of Ephemeral Eyes or simply kill a boss to go back to your human form and be revived. So the world Boletaria and Demon Souls is divided into the Nexus, which is basically like your hub, and 6 other Archstones, but only 5 of them are going to be accessible. These Archstones will teleport you to 5 regions in Boletaria, each with its own unique location, items, and NPCs. So if you look into your option menu, you can view the option called World Tendency. This will display the 5 different Archstones, and in the middle is going to be your character. So basically here, you'll be able to view the changes in tendency for each Archstone, and also the changes in the tendency for your character. These tendency can shift in color, based on the actions and certain things that you choose to do. So for an example, they might look like this. So if you choose to play the game in offline mode, at the beginning of the game, all of the tendency for both your character and the other worlds will be neutral. And this is what they look like. So this basically means that you have control over the world and character tendency. But if you choose to play online, the world tendency for each area will be determined by the players all around the world, how they behave. So basically like the metadata of the whole community. That's what will determine the world tendency for each area, but you still have control over your own character tendency. If you look at the top left of your screen, by your health, you'll notice there's a symbol. This symbol represents your character tendency. And on the top right is another symbol that shows your world tendency. So these symbols are basically like ways of showing you what tendency you're in for like both your character or the world that you're in. So let's start with the world tendency first. The world tendency for each Archstone determines the events or certain areas that you can access in each Archstones, the NPCs that you will meet, how difficult the enemies are, how much HP you have in soul form, is it less than 50%, how much damage you deal, and how good or bad the drop rates for items are in each area. So each Archstone in the game has its own world tendency, which is independent from the other Archstones. So for example, if you choose to do something in the Boletarian Palace that changes the world tendency, it will only apply there, and it will not change the tendency in Shrine of Storms or Tower of Latria, for example. The tendency in the game can either shift towards white or towards black. People like to use a point system for this, so if you look at this as a point system where neutral represents 0 or the starting point, you need to get 3 points to shift from neutral to pure white world tendency. There's an important note here. You have to remember that if you die while you're in human form in a certain world, you would lose a point, as your tendency will shift by a point. So for example, let's say you're at +3, which is pure white world tendency. Then you died in that world while in human form. The world tendency will shift back to +2. And then if you died again in human form, you would shift back to +1. And then if you died a third time, you'd go back to neutral. So each death in human form that you die is going to be only applied in that world that you die in. The rest of the Archstones will not be affected by it. So you have to remember that only death in human form will affect the world tendency. So if you're in soul form and you die multiple times, your world tendency will remain the same. So let's say that you're a completionist and you want to experience all the pure white world tendency events. So the best way to do this is first to die in human form while you're still in the Nexus, because the tendency in the Nexus will not change. And then after that, you start exploring every single Archstone while you're in soul form. So that way, if you die, the tendency will not shift back. Okay, now let's take Boletarian Palace as an example for a world. Every time you defeat a boss, you get a +1 point. This point will not update until you port back to the Nexus. So if you defeat the boss and you look through your menu, your world tendency will look the same until you port back to the Nexus, and then it will update. So after you defeat the boss, make sure you go back to the Nexus, die in human form so you'll be back in soul form, because if you die in human form after defeating the boss, basically you will undo all the progress that you've done. You will lose the point. So other ways you can get your tendency to shift towards white is if you kill one of the dragons, for example, you get a point. Also, if a black phantom invades you and defeat that phantom, your world tendency will also shift by 1. There are also these primeval demons that can spawn, and if you kill one of them, they will shift your world tendency by +3. But they require a specific condition to spawn, and we will discuss that in the next section. Also, an important note to remember that not every Archstone has like 4 bosses. So sometimes you would just need to kill like 2 or 3 bosses to get pure white world tendency if you start at neutral, because some of them give you like more than a single point, so like something like 1.5 or 1.3, but it's easier to just say like 1 for like simplicity. So what happens when you get pure white world tendency? So first, you'll be able to meet, fight, or help 5 unique NPCs that will only be accessible with pure white world tendency. So you will meet Miralda in the Boletarian Palace, Scurver in Stonefang Tunnel, Ridiel in Tower of Latria, Satsuki in Shrine of Storm, and Selen in Valley of Defilement. With pure white world tendency, you'll be given access to new weapons and armor sets that were locked behind paths that were inaccessible before. So the difficulty of enemies will be easier, they will do like less damage. You'll have 10% more damage in soul form. You will get less upgrade material to be dropped from the enemies, but you'll get more healing grass dropped from them. And now let's move on to pure black world tendency and see how that works. A simple, safe way to do it is to die in body form while you're in a specific Archstone or in like an area. So if you're starting at neutral and you want to get to pure black world tendency, you have to die 4 times. So each death is going to count for a -1. So let's say you died 1 time in body form in, let's say, Boletarian Pass, -1. You died again in body form or human form, -2, and so on until you reach -4, which is your pure black world tendency. So let's say that you're switching from pure white world tendency to pure black world tendency. So you're going from +3 to -4. So you need to die 7 times in body form to go from +3 to -4, and that's going to be your pure black world tendency. But dying in body form in every world is not the only way that you can turn your tendency towards black. So do you remember the 5 unique NPCs that I mentioned earlier that you get to meet in pure white world tendency? So if you kill them, the world tendency will also shift. But here's the catch: if the NPC is hostile as a result of their quest line, or when you just meet them and you decide to like kill them, then only the world tendency will shift, and it will shift by -3. Also, if you decide to kill the non-hostile NPCs that you get to meet in the pure white world tendency, then your world tendency will shift by -3, and your character tendency as well by like -2. So here's something that's unconfirmed. So it is said that if you invade a player and kill the host, your world tendency is supposed to change, and your character tendency as well. But here's the issue, is that when you're playing in online, your world tendency is determined by like all the players, so it's actually hard to determine if it actually changes your world tendency or not. But don't worry, I will tie in both character tendency and world tendency in the final section. So in pure black world tendency, here's what you can expect to happen. You'll encounter tougher enemies, but they will give you more souls. They will also have better drop rates for like materials that you need to upgrade your weapon. You will also encounter the Black Phantom version of the 5 unique NPCs that I mentioned earlier that you get to meet the pure white world tendency, and if you defeat them, they will give you like weapons and armor. And finally, you get to encounter the primeval demons, which will appear when the world tendency is like -3, so it's like 1 point away from being pure black world tendency. But if you're at -4, they're still gonna be there. So when you kill them, they have a chance to drop the colorless demon soul, which can be used to upgrade like special and rare weapons that you get. And it's also important to remember that there is only 1 primeval demon that exists per Archstone, so you have like 5 of them in the whole game. So these primeval demons spawn in hidden areas, and if you decide to kill one of them, your world tendency will shift by +3 points. So this is basically a way for the game to help you go back to like neutral. So if you kill them at -4, you'll go back to -1. Next up, we have character tendency. This is another tendency mechanic in the game that can shift between pure black or pure white, which basically, it depends on your character good or bad deeds. Character tendency has its own way of shifting, which means things like killing bosses in an area, dying in human form will not change your character tendency to white or black. So how does it work? So if you start at neutral, which represents 0, you will need 5 points to go from neutral to pure white character tendency. Let's say you want to get pure white character tendency in a single playthrough. So what can you do? Remember when I told you that when you reach pure black world tendency in an Archstone, you get to meet a Black Phantom version of that special NPC, and there's like 1 per Archstone, so there's like total of 5 Black Phantom NPCs that you can get to meet. Well, if you defeat one of them, your character tendency will shift by a single point. As soon as you kill a Black Phantom NPC, if you look at the top left of your screen, you'll notice that the change of character tendency will take effect right away. So you'll see like it's gonna get lighter or darker as soon as you do something. So if you go and defeat every single Black Phantom unique NPC in every Archstone, your character tendency will shift to pure white. But that happens only if you start at neutral. It is also important to note that by killing those NPCs, the world tendency will shift by +3 towards white. As you can see, initially my Archstone's world tendency were all pure black, and they went to being like -1, which is close to being neutral. And that happened just by killing those Black Phantoms, the unique ones. However, this only applies to those 5 unique NPCs: Meralda, Skerver, Ridiol, Satsuki, and Selen. Because in the game you get to meet other Black Phantom NPCs and also Black Phantom enemies, and if you kill those, nothing will change. So make sure to remember that. So at this point, people that play the game in offline mode will be like, I need so many stones that will give me back my human form so I can die multiple times to switch a world tendency to like pure black. Well, guess what? I got you covered. During the final boss of Valley of Defilement, you'll find those disgusting things coming out of the swamp. If you kill them, they have a chance to drop it. So all you have to do is just keep farming it until you get as many stones that you need to get neutral, pure white to pure black. And that's the easiest way if you're playing offline. There's also other ways to get points towards pure white character tendency. What you have to do is kill invaders that will invade your world, or if you're playing in a co-op game and there's an invader and you get the killing blow, that will also shift your character tendency towards white. So why would you want to have pure white character tendency? Sometimes you can get a reward from NPCs for having pure white tendency. You will deal more damage in soul form. This damage adds up with a pure white world tendency, raising up your damage by 20%. Also, there are some weapons in the game that will scale with your character tendency. Now we get to pure black character tendency. So if we assume that you're starting from neutral character and you want to switch to pure black, you will need -5 points. Some people use the percentage system to explain like how the world tendency shifts or like the character tendency, but I like using like the point system, using like +1 or -1. I think it makes it more consistent that way. Basically, pure black character tendency is like way of the game saying that you're evil, your character is evil. So in order to do that, all you have to do is just simply kill NPCs. I mean, it's much easier to achieve because any NPC that you kill will either give you like -3 points or -2 points towards black character tendency. So it's like you can achieve it very quickly. If you decide to kill NPCs in the Nexus, only your character tendency will be affected, because the world tendency in the Nexus is not affected by anything. It doesn't change. So for example, if you kill the Crestfallen Warrior, the Worshipper, or Acolyte of God, or whoever, this could be like your safest way of changing your character tendency to pure black without touching any Archstones or affecting any other world tendencies. So another way to like change your character tendency towards black is to kill the vendors in every Archstone. So when you're going to be playing the game and exploring, you get to meet like these NPCs that will sell you items. So if you choose to kill them, your character tendency will change, and only your character tendency, like the world tendency, will remain the same. I mean, it's your choice if you want to do that, but some of these NPCs sell like really good items, so it's not really worth it. So do you remember the 5 unique NPCs that you get to meet or help or encounter when you have like pure white world tendency? Well, if you kill the non-hostile NPCs in like the Archstone that they're in, you will change both your character tendency and the world tendency together. So the world tendency will go by like -3, and your character tendency will go by -2. And finally, The last way to like shift your character tendency towards black, all you have to do is invade and kill players, and that way you're gonna get points for it until you reach. So if you get like probably 5 players, you'll probably be at pure black tendency. But if you're starting from, let's say, pure white tendency and you're going to pure black tendency, then you'll need to go from +5 all the way to -5. So you have to kill like 10 players, like invade and kill 10 players. So why should you switch to black character tendency? So if you love invading and that's the thing that you want to do in the game, you'll be able to deal more damage as an invader. There are some weapons in the game that will scale off of black character tendency. There's also an NPC that's locked behind having pure black character tendency, and also another condition that you have to meet first. And your HP in soul form is going to be reduced to 45%. But just know that if your world and character tendency are pure black, then the game is going to be very hard. You will have way less HP in soul form, I think up to like 40%. My final remarks on the character tendency. It is much harder to go from like pure black character tendency to pure white character tendency. Because if you're playing in offline mode, you only get 5 unique like NPC phantoms that if you kill, they can give you like 5 points, and that's enough to only take you back to neutral. Then you'll have to go through a new game plus and kill them again to go to pure white. However, if you're playing in online and you kill invaders, all you have to do is just kill 10 of them, and you'll go from like -5 all the way to +5. So also, if you're playing in offline, your world tendency will not carry over into new game plus. It's just gonna reset back to neutral. But your character tendency will carry over to new game plus. Now I want to give you some tips. So when you get the game, don't be afraid, invade, experiment, have fun. If you end up in a situation where your world tendencies are all black, don't worry, you can switch it from pure black world tendency into pure white world tendency. So let's say that all of the world tendency that you have right now are pure black. So here's what you have to do. Make sure you leave a boss alive in every single archstone. And after that, go into that archstone while you're in soul form so you don't die in human form. So here's what you have to do. You have to kill the unique NPC Black Phantom. Do not port back to the Nexus. So that way your world tendency does not update. So, because if you do that, the Primeval Demon will be gone. So what you have to do next is just find the Primeval Demon and kill him. And that way you're going to secure +6 points. So once you port back to the Nexus, you're going to go from like -4 all the way to like +2. And after that, just kill the final boss. And there you go, you're going to be at +3. So before you attempt that, think of a strategy how you're going to do it. This method will work for most of the archstone, but I'll just show you a couple of them so you can see what you can do, and then just try to figure out how you would do the rest. I mean, it will work with like most of the archstones, except for one. You have to kind of do it in a different way. So let's take, for example, the Stone Fang Tunnel. So what you would do is you would go there in soul form. You would go down and find Scurver, the Black Phantom of Scurver, and kill him. It's going to be very hard because your HP is going to be very low and it's pure black tendency, so he can probably like almost one-shot you. Once you kill him, just kill yourself and you resurrect, and then go all the way back to the beginning where the Primeval Demon is. Kill him, and there you go, +6 points. But make sure you don't port midway. Never go back to the Nexus until you're done with everything. So the way it works is the Black Phantom NPC will give you +3 towards your world tendency, and the Primeval Demon will give you another +3 towards your world tendency. So if you were to kill one of them and port back, let's say you killed the Phantom and you port back to the Nexus, then guess what? Primeval Demon is gone. Let's say you killed the Primeval Demon first and you ported, the Black Phantom will be gone. So you kind of have to think your strategy before you do it. I hope this guide helped you guys to learn something new, or if you're first time playing the game, hopefully it clarifies the system to you, because it's like it will take some time to get used to it. I never figured it out back in 2009 until like recently, so hopefully it helps somebody out there. With the remake coming very soon, they said that the only change that they did to the world tendency is that you'll be able to know what kind of tendency you're in, like the state in. So who knows, they might be using the percentage system, they might be using the point system, but in the end, like if you convert the, like let's say the numbers into percentage, it's going to be the same thing. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe for more content. I'll be working on the weapon upgrades for the next video.